Hello, I'm Dory McWhorter, President and CEO of the Executives Club of Chicago. Welcome to Executives Exchange, a podcast to explore the ideas and issues shaping Chicago and the world beyond it. Today, I'm joined by Jeanne Sparrow, 7-time Emmy-winning media personality, keynote speaker, Northwestern University faculty member, and author. Today, we're talking about the art and power of pivoting. Hey, Jeanne.
Hey, Dory.
I've been looking forward to this. I shouldn't say that because I look forward to all of our podcast guests.
Of course you do. Of course you do. I've been looking forward to it as well.
But I've really been looking forward to speaking with you because as I went through the intro and listed the many things, the many titles you have held, none of them all fully describe you though. But when we were talking about this concept, the art of the pivoting, because we know so many of our business leaders and audience members are facing this on a daily basis, we were like, who do we talk to? And Jeanne Sparrow, of course, came to mind. So Jeanne, I want you to talk about the word pivot itself and what it means to you.
Oh, okay. It's interesting because a lot of people have told me I pivot, and I don't see it that way. To me, a pivot is something that happens when you dance. You're going in one direction and you turn.
Yes.
Right? And then you turn again.
Yes.
And that is what the pivot is. It's the ability, I think, to look from one direction and then look in another one and see something new, even though you may be looking at the same thing. That's what pivoting actually means to me at its most basic and as it applies how we're talking now.
So I love that because that analogy, literally, I could see that in my mind's eye, right? And so, but when we talk about pivot, we do talk about some of that external perspective that people made that shift. But we also know that there is this internal process that folks often go through. So to your point, may not think of it explicit as a pivot because internally they're processing that different. So how do you think about that perspective around internal versus external pivoting?
So I believe you realize you pivot when somebody else tells you that you have, right? Because I think most of us are moving from one thing to the next, from the thing that we are interested in and good at now, and all of the things that we, and experiences that we accumulate in that time, and then we go to the next logical step for us. So that looks like a pivot from the outside in, but from the inside out, I don't know that it always does. I think the internal experience of a pivot happens when you hit a wall and you've got to turn and you don't know what's either on the other side of that wall or in which direction you should go. And then you have to make a decision about what you will do next. I've had all of those things happen to me because sometimes the door gets closed in your face and you go, okay, now I got to do something different. I don't want to do something different. But the internal and external difference has to do with where our awareness is focused at that time and how we experience it. Like, I accept when people say, you're really great at pivoting, because to me, it's just progressing, right? But I understand what it may look like from the outside just based on how many people, especially in the past, have gone through their careers and how that looks different now for economic reasons, social reasons, and so many more.
I appreciate that so much because I also think that there is an expectation that people have that things are just straight. And so if things are not going straight, if it's something different, oh, that's a pivot or that's a turn or a shift. So I appreciate that perspective so much. So, but you have had a series of, let's call them pivots for now.
Yes,
You've had a series of evolutions, of progress throughout your career. But I do think that you started, when you think about sort of this art of pivoting, you probably started really early because as we were discussing, sort of changing, even deciding to do something different out of college for you. So let's talk about that experience. So
my undergraduate degree is in psychology.
I can see some of that coming out, Jeanne. And in that pivot explanation, I was like, oh, I thought to myself, I'll say it out loud now because you brought it up, but I was like, oh, you could so see that she was a psychology major.
And I thought I was going to be a therapist.
Okay.
But I had kind of gotten burnt out by the end of college with learning. You think about it, you get to the last year of college, you've been in school for what, 16 years, 17 years at that point, if you count pre-K and K, and you go
I was in Head Start. I was in school a long time.
Right, very long time. They called it nursery school where I was. But in any case, I think when you spent that much time doing it, you realize you're at the end of the road. And I think we all panic in that moment because something that we have known is about to end. We've gone through all these changes. And I had a really wonderful counselor in school. He was my advisor for everything. And I was in a program to graduate with honors, which was going to set me up for grad school. I realized I didn't want to go straight into grad school, and there was no such thing as a gap year then. Right. We didn't have the verbiage for it. Right. But he was just like, you can go work for a couple years. In fact, it might do you some good. And I was like, but I have to do this if I'm going to graduate with honors. He was like, you don't have to graduate with honors. And I was like, huh? He was like, who are you doing that for? I was like, does it make a difference? You're getting your degree. He was like, does it really make a difference to have that honors on there? And I was like, well, my mama. And he said, but are you doing it for you or are you doing it for your mama? And I was just like, yeah. He was like, you're an adult now. You can make these adult decisions and you can decide what you're going to do. He said, and you don't know what your path is. Just go out and explore it. And I will be forever grateful to him because that was the very first pivot. I think that was a detour, but not a detour, because a detour, I think, suggests that you're going someplace you don't want to go. Right. I had been doing radio since I was in high school. I had gotten an opportunity when I was a senior in high school to work in radio at a local station in my hometown of New Iberia, Louisiana. And I didn't think it was a career because I was in this little market where you made minimum wage and my bosses didn't even work there full time. Do you know what I mean? Right. So it was something fun to do. I was making more than my friends at McDonald's, but I wasn't making enough to live on, and I didn't think it was a career. And then I get to Chicago, and I'm at school at Northwestern, and I go to the Career Center, and they were like, you know what, get an internship, see how you like it, because this is really the only thing you know how to do other than type. Do you really want to be a secretary for your, before you go back to grad school? And I was like, I wouldn't mind. I make good money being a secretary. What are you talking about? But they were like, try this and see how it goes. So I did this internship my senior year at WGN Radio. Okay. And I talked to our the intern supervisor, and he was just like, you do realize how much money people make here, right? He was like, you know that this is a very lucrative field when you're in a market like this. And I was like, no, how much money do they make? Because I didn't know not to ask. Right. And because you don't know what an option is until somebody tells you what it is. And so as it happened, I just followed that path. And then radio led to television, which people called a pivot. I didn't see it as such. I was like, that's just another job doing the same thing. And when I look back on even the progression rather from high school to college to my first jobs, all I ever did was talk. So to me, I'm doing the same thing in different settings. The setting may make you think that I've pivoted and that I've turned a corner and done something different, but I swear, I promise you on all that I hold holy in my life that I'm literally doing the same thing at a different level in a different setting. It looks different to other people.
I love that so much, Jeanne, because for those who, I know a lot of our listeners will be familiar with your background, but I do want you to talk about this trajectory because when I became aware of the Miss Jeanne Sparrow, it was on WGCI. I was moving from Madison and having graduated from college, coming to Chicago, and I woke up with you every morning, Jeanne. And here we are. And so from that perspective, I would love for you to share sort of that journey, because then you can connect those dots for people as you talk about how you see it as one thing that you've done in different areas versus different things that others may observe.
Right. So, oh gosh, okay. Listen, at this point in my life, trying to remember things. Okay, so
first, your best recollection of them. How about that?
First job was copywriting. Okay. I wrote commercials for live reads, which are not pre-recorded for WGN. As a talk radio station, everybody did live reads, so I wrote those scripts, and I actually got fired from that job because I started working at a suburban radio station. And then I started working at Shadow Traffic because one of my advisors at the time, like one of my mentors, said to me, and I would, and I think about like the audacity I had to be sending my little air checks, my little cassette to, the president of another station to get feedback on. But he did. And he would call me and be like, let's talk about this. And he recommended that I do traffic because he was like, you sound really practiced and rehearsed. You sound great, but you need to be conversational. And he was like, the best way you can do that is by reporting traffic, because you have to do it in the moment because it's irrelevant 10 minutes later. So you have to do it in the moment. So he recommended me to the people over there. They hired me part-time. Then my boss, not my direct boss, but his boss at WGN called me. He must have heard me one time, and he was like, what are you doing? And I was like, Bob knows about it. I was like, I'm just doing my little part-time thing. I want to be on air. We talked about this. Like, he was a big mentor to me when I was when I was an intern. And I was just like, I'm just doing what I want to do. And he was like, well, you can't do both. I said, well, I guess this is going to have to be goodbye, sir. And he was just like, you're going to leave this station? Do you know what this station means in this market? I was like, I do, but I'm not doing what I want to do here.
Wow.
And he was just like, you're going to regret this. And I didn't.
Technically, Jeanne, that wasn't a firing. That was you selecting different.
Right,
opting out.
But he fired me and I got unemployment.
Okay. That's
so
smart.
Let's call
that was strategic.
And on my thing it said insubordination. And I was like, well, I am insubordinate a lot of the time. So technically he did me a favor because I had extra money to go until Shadow ended up hiring me full time. So I did traffic, and from traffic I started working at GCI. I was doing traffic there first. Then I started doing weekends. Then I did overnights, and I worked with Steve Harvey and George Wallace in mornings. Did middays for a stretch. Then I started doing television. My first gig in TV was doing the Bud Billiken Parade.
Oh, wow.
For Central City Productions, being a sideline reporter, talking to people, barbecuing down King Drive. And I think, oh gosh, I can't remember all the stations next. I think it was Channel 50 at the time. He had seen me on there and was like, do you want to do this kind of show? And so I just kept following it. And the next thing you know, I'm doing traffic on TV and entertainment reporting and then anchoring You and Me. And that's, I think, it.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Well, on that for that particular track, but then you also, we'll talk about the book in a minute. But you've been doing,
that's where the TV stuff ended.
Yeah,
sorry, that's where the TV stuff ended.
Yeah.
I went back to grad school while I was hosting You and Me This Morning on the U, because it was more like a bucket list thing, and it was also to figure out what I knew. I didn't know what my knowledge was worth, because at this point, when I got there, I think I had been in the business for 20 some years at this point. And I still didn't know what I knew and what it was valuable for outside of what I did.
Okay.
Like I knew what it was worth to produce. I knew what it was worth to be a host, to be able to MC, to be able to do all these things that are related to communications. But I didn't know how it related in the real world, because I think we're so insulated in broadcast from the rest of the world in a deep way. Like, we have a lot of casual brushes with regular business and things like that, but we are seen more as a creative enterprise.
Right.
So you don't realize the business value of what you do until you understand the whole picture. And that's what I went to grad school for. And that's what I got from it. I finally understood what we knew. And I realized that's how we had knowledge that other people didn't have. Because people were asking me questions. I was like, why don't you know this? Why don't you know this? And that's really how the book started, was because I realized there was something locked in my brain from what I did for a living all these years that was actually worth something someplace else. Now that to me is a pivot, because when that show got canceled, I was like, do I really want to get up at 2:30 in the morning to do another morning show? Do I want to compete with people half my age that have twice my energy do I really want to still do this? And the answer came back a resounding no. So I had to find something else to do. And that's what found me.
So it's interesting because we are constantly adapting, right? So whether it's new clients, new technology, we're always talking about these conversations at the Executives Club that leaders are facing new adaptations all the time. But why do you think specifically the word pivot feels especially significant or weighty in today's world?
Oh, I think it's because of the rate of change that we're feeling. Like, I think it amplifies everything. Right? If you think about the rate of change that happened, say, in the late 80s, 90s up until 2000, and then the change, like that 20-year span, right? And then the 25 years since. Think about all the changes that have happened since the year 2000 and how the quickness of how it's changed. Like, I remember when the first iPhone came out. I mean, let's take it even back a little bit further. The first iPod, remember how that completely blew our minds?
Right.
That you could have all this music in your pocket and not need, and we couldn't see what was coming next. But think about how quickly everything came next, how quickly they iterated from this little hard drive we had to what is virtually a computer now in our pockets, and how it rules our lives. Think about how quickly that happened, and think about how long it took us to get from computers that were the size of a room that processed our grades in high school and college to, desktops and laptops, how long it took just to get to something that was reasonable, right? In a business sense. I remember when I first started working in college, when I would see actual computers, like, in radio, when I first started, everything was analog. Everything was on physical mediums. It was reel-to-reel tapes. It was carts, which are like 8-track tapes, cassettes, then later CDs. I have seen radio go, in the 30-some years I've been in broadcasting, from completely analog to now completely digital. I can pack up my studio that I do my weekend show on iHeart with, and I can take that with me wherever I go. I don't have to take off if I'm going to take a long trip and I have the internet. If I can plug into the internet, I can go onto the air. So that pace of change makes us see the changes we need to make with that as the backdrop.
Right.
And it can feel really intimidating because now we're adding yet another layer of change on top of what's already happening in the background. And one thing about human beings is we can't stay in change.
Say that again, Jeanne.
One thing about human beings is we can't stand change.
Yes.
Even though it is the only thing that is constant in our lives. And if it stops, that means we're dead.
So true.
There's not a moment in your life that something isn't changing. The cells in your body are always regenerating. When you go around your house and you clean up, you're going to move the book over there. You're going to move the plant over there. You're going to do all these little things. It's never going to be exactly the same. Nothing's going to look the same. If you close one eye, one thing looks one way. If you open the other one, it looks another way.
Yeah.
Change is our constant state, and yet we fight it all the time, me included. I'm not saying I'm immune to it.
Same, but there is a mindset there, right? So, and you spoke to that because I love that description, Jeanne, because it is so true that it feels so daunting because there is so much happening all the time. So those pivots aren't just one big change or two big changes. They're constant movement now. So what about like the mindset when you think that some pivots are personal choice, when you're choosing to say, I'm going to do this versus being forced into something where those circumstances are really dictating what that pivot needs to be?
So I don't think there's a whole lot of difference other than the emotional weight of that. I think that when you are in a position where you are forced to make a change and a pivot, you resent it, you're upset about it. You have to go through all that grieving process. And that's really the only thing that makes it any different, because when it comes down to it, all you're doing when you pivot is taking something you do one place and doing it someplace else. It's the transferable skills we talk about all the time. Like, what did you do here that now applies here, right? And getting creative about that and really boiling things down to their essence and saying, this is the kernel, the raw truth, the baseline of what I do on a regular basis. If I did it here, then I can do it there. Whether or not it's something I choose and it's a natural progression of my evolution and in my skills and my talents, or it's because somebody says, no, I don't want you to do that anymore here.
Right.
And now you have to figure something else out. Then you have to deal with your emotions and then be able to tap into the rest of it. And I think that's hard to do, especially mid-career, especially when you've had a lot of great accomplishments. It is hard to start over at any age, but at middle age, when you're staring down the second half of your life, that's when it gets really hard, because it's like, what kind of dues do I really want to pay again?
We'd like to take a moment to thank Shure Incorporated for being a proud sponsor of the Executives Exchange podcast. Shure is the gold standard trusted by podcasters, musicians, and broadcasters around the world. Whether you're recording at home or in a professional studio, Shure microphones deliver clear, reliable audio every time, meaning fewer distractions, better conversations, and a more polished experience for your listeners. Visit Shure.com to explore their full range of products for home use and professional media needs. In the series of adaptations that you've made and pivots that you've made, has there been one that was particularly rewarding because I want both, Jeanne, and one that you found challenging?
I think starting my business was the most challenging. When I made the decision that I don't want to continue my career in TV, and don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it immensely, but once you've done just about everything you want to do and you realize you're not going to be able to do absolutely everything you wanted to do, and you don't have it in you to do it anymore, then you have to come to grips with that. So that's the reason why that one was challenging for me. It was exciting to think about, because I had a business on my mind for a while and just didn't know what it would be like. And I never forget the day they canceled our show, and my on-air partner, Melissa Foreman, and I got politely shown the door and invited to find our success elsewhere. I remember I talked to my financial planner a couple of days later, and he was just like, Jeanne, he was like, you have had ideas for businesses for the last 5 years, and you've not done anything with any of them. You've had some opportunities to do some things, because by this point, I was speaking, like not just emceeing on behalf of the station and doing other things. People were asking me to speak here and there, and I was doing it. I had even taught in the program I had graduated from. I had done a couple seminars at this point. And he was like, God keeps opening windows for you, and you politely stick your head out, you look around, and then you bring your head back in, and then you keep doing what you've been doing. He was like, at this point, he had to shut the door, shut a door and then open another one and shove you through it. And I was like, oh, so you're saying I don't have another choice at this point? And that's what it felt like, because it was me facing a change and a choice. So I had to actively choose to do something different. I had an agent. I could have looked for another job,
Right.
but doing a similar thing. But I had to say, no, I think I'm going to try this other thing that's been in the back of my head for a really long time. And I'll be honest, a book was not part of it. The book came later. It wasn't the initial push. It was just, I have this stuff inside my head that other people don't seem to know and need. And I can also make a living doing that. Absolutely.
Right.
And it was a different lifestyle. It was a different choice. But I'll tell you, going from working for somebody all the time to working for yourself, it was hard. I felt like I was losing every day, and I'm used to winning.
Right.
I was just like, I don't know any of this stuff. And I fail at it every day. That was the biggest blow to my ego, is that I wasn't winning all the time.
So let's talk about then that push to the book, right? Because you got there. And so I could totally see how that particular pivot was rewarding and challenging to be able to have the opportunity to make a different choice. So when you thought about writing your book, what reflections were you making on your career to shape the story that you wanted to tell?
Somebody else did that for me. I had a business coach who called my attention to what I was actually doing with what I knew. She was like, you realize you've built a framework to help people understand what you do. You've already been doing this work. Why not formalize it in terms of a book? And it will also help your business this way, because then you will have gotten it out of your head and onto paper, and you can reach more people with it. And I was like, oh, people do that? I guess they do that.
Yeah.
I didn't see myself that way. So the reflection, I think, was realizing that what I wanted to share and had been sharing with people, because I was probably about 2 years into my business at this point. It was realizing that it was worth writing down, and that it was worth explaining, and that it was worth the effort. That was really the push to the book, was somebody else shining a light in a space that I didn't see, because I'm also used to creating things that are very ephemeral, right? When you work in radio and television, like, it's literally air.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
Airwaves.
Right.
So I'm used to I remember when I got the first set of books shipped to me right before it came out, I was stunned, because I could actually hold my work and my knowledge up until that point. And I was 54 when I was doing it, about to turn 55. So for 30 some years of working, I had never been able to hold my work.
That's so powerful, Jeanne, to have that, again, that imagery of going to a career or making a career move that allows you to now physically do that. Now, we keep saying the book. Let's talk about the book's title. Like, the book has a name.
It does.
It's kind of like saying the baby. The book got a name. Let's call the baby. Let's call the book about a name.
It is my baby. You know my baby. I love my baby. My baby's name is Fearless Authenticity, Lead Better, Sell More, and Speak Sensationally.
That's so fabulous. And I really feel like it's so you, right? It's an opportunity, as you said, to put all that you've learned in the frameworks that you've built and make it tangible for folks. What has been something you have learned as you wrote the book and in that doing that whole writing process that you felt really did highlight, maybe not calling it a pivot, but the changes that you've made in your career?
That it was so universal. When I first had a conversation about what I wanted the book to be, once my business coach had kind of said, this is something you should consider and look at as a product for your business. One of the things that I was really concerned about is that my experience was too unique to apply to anybody else's reality. Right? I've been a creative my whole life. I've been in broadcasting, which is only, it's a small industry.
Sure.
And I was like, are people ever going to be able to see that the core of how I do what I do, they can do too? And so that's when I started my podcast to start interviewing people, because I also had to prove it to myself.
Right.
It wasn't just proving it to other people. It was proving it to me before I could ever sell it to somebody else. And what I realized when I started talking to people and asking them about how who they were affected what they did and how they expressed their value, how they used that in service of other people to build whatever it was they built, whether it was another artist, whether it was a performer, whether it was an entrepreneur, somebody in corporate, or, you know, somebody who built something from the ground up with, you know, little to no resources. Every single person had a moment where they had to choose to dig into who they were and use that in their business, whether it was as a differentiating factor in marketing or whether it was in their actual offerings. At some point in time, you put your thumbprint on what you do, and people know what it is and that you touched it, right? We call it reputation, we call it brand, we call it a lot of different things, but really what it is, it's the essence of you. It's why you're here. And that's when I realized, okay, this is something I can write a book about, because it won't be just useful to people in this sphere. I wanted it to be, because I had a sense that it meant something more than what I had been using it for. And that explaining it would help other people do more with it.
How have you found people receptive to that?
It's interesting. It either resonates or it doesn't.
Right.
Right. I think I have to catch people at exactly the right moment. But I think that anybody who is in a transition, which is why I think right now has been such an interesting time to talk about this, because a lot of people are going through transitions.
Very true.
And whether they call it a pivot or not, there's a lot of change happening. And I think my work helps to ground people in, because it's easy to lose your way when things are changing, especially if you're trying to go with the flow of the tide. And you can do that and still maintain your foundation. Like, I liken it to, you know, something floating in water and going, you know, coming in and out with the tide, and something that is rooted, like coral, that, you know, sprouts when it's healthy and, you know, has these little tendrils that go up and get the food and bring it down. And you are in a flow, but you're also really, really grounded in who you are and what you do and what you're there for. And I think that's the thing people need when they're going through transitions, when they're going through, you know, whether that's a reorganization, a merger, acquisition, like, and when you want to think about it in business terms, that's when businesses lose their way, right? How many times have you seen a business fail when they were supposed to take off?
Right.
Part of that is because they lost their way. And I think in moments of transition, my message and my method and my framework helps people to get a grip on that and to see where that transferable skill, that value can be, how it can be talked about and then used in a different way to serve different people.
Now, I know that you found yourself continuing to give career advice to people in different phases and stages of their life. So what type of guidance have you found yourself more often than not giving folks?
It's interesting because I do teach at Northwestern to young people who are getting a master's degree, about to enter the workforce really in earnest for the first time. And I just had a conversation with one of my students yesterday who is amazingly accomplished, you know, is fluent in 2 languages, conversational in 2 more, has traveled the world, has done all of these internships and worked for these great places. And she was like, I don't feel like I have enough to compete. And I was like, she was like, and I was like, tell me more.
Right.
And the thing I realized is that it was about perspective. She was looking, and maybe I should have used the pivot word instead of, because what I said to her was, you are looking at what you don't have. You don't have the paid experience. You don't have a sponsor in the arena that you want to be in the industry you want to be in. You don't even know what industry you want to be in. You know what your skills are, and you know they apply some places, but you don't know. And so you're looking at what you don't have. I was like, let's look over here to see what you do have. And how you can use that to be competitive. And I told her the thing that my mother told me, that she later goes, oh, you know what? My mom said the same thing a different way. I said, what's for you will not miss you.
Right. That's such good advice. And I feel that we are, to your earlier point, we are in this moment where there's so much transition and people are being forced to pivot. And so, Jeanne, as you think about your own career, is there a true end game? Is there a goal?
No, there isn't. I do think setting goals is important so that you have a place to land. But realize that when you get to that goal, whatever it is that you have learned is going to show you what else you have to do, what else you are obligated to do to serve with what you know, because to whom much is given, much is required. You can't know that the whole way out. But when you focus just a little bit out, you can get to that goal, because we don't, you can't put somewhere in GPS. You have to put a place in the GPS. So decide what that is and then be flexible about it and realize that it's going to change once you get there, because it's never going to look like what you think it does anyway.
Right.
And it's probably going to let you down a little bit. And then if you're forced to change it, then you're going to be mad about it. And then you will be able to see clearly. I don't, and I know this might be a controversial thing to say and maybe a weird thing to say, but like, I don't ever want to stop working.
It's not weird.
I don't want to retire. I want to work less, work differently, and things like that. As I age and as I'm able to do different things, I know that my abilities are going to change. They already have. But I always want to be contributing, and I always want to have that exchange, right? Because when you contribute, life is a beautiful reciprocal thing. You will get something back in return.
Right.
You don't do it for that, but that's just the nature of how life works. So for me, there is no end. It's just the next thing. But I have a goal I want to get to, but I know there's going to be another goal after that.
I love that so much, Jeanne, because earlier this week, I had an opportunity to go to lunch with a group of women, and there was an 86-year-old there and an 80-year-old there, and they're all working, or I would say another way, they're all contributing still to where they want to bring their gifts to. And I just feel like I love the thought of, because I do think that people probably struggle with pivoting as well, because there is some type of predetermined destination. And then if it's not a direct path there, they're like, oh, well, now I'm going over here. Well, how am I going to get to that destination? And I love your perspective is that, hey, wherever you get to, that whatever you entered and in that app now, because I was thinking MapQuest, I was like, okay, that's not the app.
But listen, MapQuest is still around.
That's true. So whatever you enter in that navigation system of your choice, that when you get to that particular destination, you gain a different point of perspective. And therefore, instead of saying, oh, it's not there, you could say, okay, but where it is here and what's possible from this new sort of place of perception or perspective. Yeah.
And I have been blessed to know some people in my industry, and speaking specifically of broadcasting, who've worked a long time, who've advised people for a long time, and watched how they've grown old in their work and how they've matured in their work and the choices that they've made. And I've heeded their advice because that's what I want to be like, right? And I don't know that there's any one road to do that, but the people who do it, I think, make very distinct choices about the fact that they want to contribute. And they want to continue contributing. It's not wanting to check out of what they're doing, unless they're checking out to do something else, right, that they have been doing in parallel or what have you. I don't have any judgment on what people's choices are when it comes to that. But the thing I notice in common with, I think they call them super agers or whatever the term, I might not be getting that term right, but the people who do that, they make a conscious choice to contribute, to share, to want to be part of things. They want to be in the mix. And if that's the only choice I have to make, then it's great. I always have something in, as my mama used to say, I got something in my back pocket that I could give that I could contribute.
Right.
So if it's just about making that a conscious choice, why not?
I love that so much, Jeanne. And I think that is the perfect place to tie a little bow on this, because you have actually, throughout this conversation, you sort of redefined pivoting. You've actually, I think that we're even going to have we started with the art of the pivot, but I think we're ending in a place where you're demonstrating through what you described here as that ongoing conscious choice to contribute. Period.
That's it.
Period. I love that.
Now you see why I don't see it as a pivot.
Exactly.
It might look like that.
Yeah.
And yes, I've had to make that choice, but that's not what it is. And that's okay. And if you can get to that place and it makes you feel good, then my job is done.
Okay. Oh, well, I'm so glad your job is never done, Jeanne. I'm so glad that you are continuing to do you, continuing to help us all grow and learn and evolve. I can't wait to continue. I gave this book to all of my college girlfriends,
and that made
my little
feel
friend
so
group.
Good.
I shouldn't say that either, because somebody be like, you didn't give me a book, but those who got it know who they are.
And I hope you've read it and liked it.
Yes, absolutely. But it does give you, to your point, that sense of it's you that you have to focus on, and then how you can continue to define what that path looks like for yourself.
Exactly. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Jeanne, for being here. And I know that there's more to come. So this is the first of many conversations.
I love it. I
so appreciate you and all that you're doing. So thank you for joining us today.
I appreciate it.
For more conversations with innovative and dynamic leaders from Chicagoland and beyond, follow the Executives Exchange podcast on your podcast app or subscribe on YouTube. Until next time.